Good evening, and we got a feedback here. Welcome to the Town of Basalt Town Council meeting for February 8, 2022. A few housekeeping items before we call the roll and get into the meeting. We are now doing this as a virtual meeting tonight, and so I just want to provide advice to any viewers that would like to address council tonight early on, so that when we get to public comment period, you'll know how to access this. So if you want to speak to council tonight, access the meeting can be found at www.basalt.net under agendas and minutes tab. So click on the February 8th meeting packet to open, then click the link to join the webinar. So that'll give you access to council. So tonight we're not going to hang around and wait for people to call in. We're going to give you an early advance notice here. So if you intend to address council, please follow those instructions and get to, again, www.basalt.net and get onto the meeting, and we can admit you from the waiting room into the meeting, and you can address council virtually. So thank you for that. So with that housekeeping note, first order of business for tonight is the call to order and a roll call, please, Pam.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Bill Kane.
Here.
Gary Tenenbaum.
Here.
Bill Infante. Glenn Drummond.
Bill is not going to be in attendance tonight, for what we understand.
Correct. Yes, thank you. We'll hold Glenn Drummond in abeyance for a moment. David Knight.
Here.
Thank you. Elise Hoddle.
Present.
And I understand Ryan Slack will not be joining us either this evening.
That's right. So Glenn's going to be signing on when he can get access to his computer. So
yes,
we'll join him when he can sign on. So thank you for that. So next order of business is the consent agenda. We have two items tonight. Item 2A is approval of minutes from January 25th, 2022. And the second item is to continue the public hearing to February 22nd on amendments to Chapter 18 of the Basalt Municipal Code, including but not limited to sustainable building regulations and renewable energy program. So we will continue that on to February 22nd. So I'd be happy to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay, moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, guys, thank you. Moved and seconded. So consent agenda we can do by voice vote. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda is approved. Next item is call to public. So as I mentioned earlier, anyone from the public that would like to address council, please dial in and get access to our virtual meeting, and then we can admit you to speak to council. So Pam, are you seeing anybody?
I see Diana Permansky from the Soper Sun. Hi, Diana. She's sitting in the attendees section, but she doesn't have her hand up. I don't believe she has any comments.
Okay. So I think given the sort of dynamic nature of virtual access, we're going to proceed with our meeting, and if people call in and just miss us by a few minutes, I think we can back up and hear comments from the public if there are any. So I just think in the interest of time, we'll move on. So mayor and council reports, comments, anything tonight from fellow councilors? I will say a few things. One is congrats, our Basalt Connect vans are up and going. I saw one blitzing through the neighborhood. They're pretty darn nice. Look like they're like Sprinter vans, which are pretty cool and really nice. We did have a nice spread in the Aspen Daily News. I appreciate Andres Savale covering a lot of activities that are going on in Basalt, so felt good about that. That was a really nice meeting. And you know, Ryan got your report from last week, and you know, we do have a bunch happening right now in town. So you know, it's our first meeting without Susan Phillips, so it's kind of it's kind of hard to adjust here to meeting without Susan doing the countdown, but we wish her the best. So if there are no other comments from council, I would turn it over to our town manager for the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a few things to share. Since you brought up the downtowner, I'll just continue on that briefly. We have now updated the website. So on our website, on the news flash, there's information about the downtowner. We'd also added that to Facebook, the town's Facebook, the PD Facebook, as well as the community Facebook page. And then we created a page on the website just because it's new. So while people are trying to get the hang of how it's going to work, it has the hours of operation on there. You can download the app, both in Android and on Apple to your phone. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory once you get that downloaded. And then we'll be putting out some more information. The Aspen Times did do an article yesterday, just briefing the community on the fact that it was up and running. And then I think we'll put out some banners, and then we're looking at putting some more information in the newspaper. So the Downtowner folks also will be, they've made up some business cards that have the information on it, and they'll be passing those out to businesses. So I think we'll be able to do a pretty good spread for getting the word out there. So enough on that. Second thing is the in-person meetings. I think at the next meeting, the last February meeting, probably go back to in-person here. I'll go ahead and rescind the emergency declaration, which we had put into place so that we could go all virtual again with our meetings, but we'll just ensure that we get that rescinded, and we'll go back to the in-person. I think we're seeing quite a drop in the caseload for Omicron, and it does appear that the Picken County Board of Health are going to drop the mask mandate, and it looks like the public health order altogether, as I understand it. Chief had sent some word around today about that, and I believe that's correct. And so with that, I think we'll be going back in, and folks can wear masks if they feel more comfortable, not a problem. And the public will be invited as well. And then the last thing, just as an update, we had talked at the last, maybe it was the last meeting in January, when we hired the folks to help us with grant writing. We knew we had a very short fuse to get a revitalization grant application into CDOT, and we hit the mark on that last Friday. It was quite a heavy lift for everyone involved, so thanks to staff and then the folks that helped us write that AIRS. And I think we have a strong application, looking for $1 million from CDOT to help with the Midland Avenue Streetscape project. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, one additional note on Basalt Connect. The app is up and operating. Very easy. It's just called Basalt Connect, and it just works like a charm. So for those listening in, Basalt Connect for your cell phone connection, and its system's working really well. So okay. So with that, next order of business are council actions. So the first one is public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 3, series of 2022. Ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving a contract to buy and sell real estate with Loose Cannon LLC for property located at 2050-26 Highway 82, Basalt, Colorado. That's umbrella roofing parcel. So Ryan and Jeff, bring us up to speed here.
Good, thanks, Mayor. I'll kick it off and Jeff can follow up with any further details. Just for sake of the public record, I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about how we got here again and what next steps are for us. So as you recall, we've been working with Ted Borschelt. We had hired him back in November to help look for properties, both for affordable housing purposes and then also for the police station. And he was able to reach out to the owners of the Umbrella Roofing company. That is a parcel that is adjacent to the parcel we bought last year for Public Works. And it's owned by Loose Cannon LLC that is now under contract for 1.7 million. We did have 1.8 in the budget contemplated for purchase of a parcel for PD. And so coming in under budget on that. The reason that we pursued purchasing a piece of property is that last summer we had completed a space needs study that we presented to council back in June. And at that time, through conversations with town staff, they were able to make a recommendation that more space was needed for the PD ultimately. Currently, they're in about 2,000 square feet, or excuse me, 2,400 square feet, which is about 2,000 square feet below our current needs. And so we're looking in the next 5 years to get a space that would be about 4,500 square feet. And so one of the things we did when we were looking at this parcel of land, we engaged with Sopris Engineering. They had provided 3 different site layouts on the property and actually utilized both the property that was under contract, but then also the Public Works. And what that did was allow us to play with some of the constraints. And in particular, there's a possibility of a roadway being extended from Widget Lane out to Original Road. So essentially connecting Highway 82 and Willets Lane as an alternative access. And because we own them, we can fiddle with that alignment and kind of square off the parcels. And as you can see from the exhibits in your packet, we can fit a 6,000 square foot building on there with plenty of parking, as well as the future Public Works site. The reason we went up to 6,000 square feet is we just wanted to give ourselves some room for additional space should that be determined. One of the things that we know in this valley, particularly the Mid-Valley, is space for training and people are looking for community space. So this might be a decent location for that in the future. I think it is important to mention that the Widget Road extension isn't a foregone conclusion. That would be triggered by a need for an additional access because of adjacent development or development that's happening in the area. So future traffic study will sort of dictate that. We'll talk about that in the coming years as we get to a design phase on this. As far as the financing on this, we're going to be talking about that next, but looking at taxable certificates of participation. We had money in the budget this year to make some payment on the land, and then we would pay it off in the next 3 years, 23, 24, and 25. That would essentially get us the land, and then at that point in time, we'd be able to talk about financing for the building itself. With that, I think that's everything that I wanted to cover. And Jeff, anything to fill in there?
Sure, I'll add just a few things. Thanks, Ryan. That was a good summary. Just a couple of reminders. first, I guess, and town council directed staff to pursue this contract for the purchase of the umbrella roofing property. And that contract is subject to approval by town council. Town council approved the ordinance to approve the contract on first reading. Here we are on second reading. And we are still in our due diligence phase with respect to this property. So far, there's nothing that's surprising. We're awaiting a survey, and early indications are that there aren't any issues of surprise. But in approving this contract, there is authority for town manager in consultation with me to take actions with respect to the contract in the event there was something in the course of due diligence or otherwise that would come up where we might need to execute an amendment to the contract or engage in some other negotiation with respect to a component of the contract. In the event that were to happen, we would make town council aware of that, and if needed, bring something back to town council for approval. But I just wanted to make sure town council understood that there is that authority granted to staff to see this forward and on until closing, unless there's something that that comes up during the course of due diligence. And so with closing in mind, that is currently scheduled for March 16th. And as Ryan alluded to, and the next agenda item shows, there will be, for your consideration, approval of an ordinance to authorize the issuing certificates of participation in relation to the purchase of this property, the financing piece of that. And those would be scheduled to close the following day. So that is my overview of some of the little legal nuances. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them, but that's it otherwise.
Great. Council, questions of Jeff regarding the contract? Jeff, I had a question in the due diligence piece. Is there and as this was a seller obligation, I would assume, would offer a clean bill of health relative to soil conditions and contaminated soils whenever you buy an industrial site? Obviously, that's a big red flag. Are we in pretty good shape from a soils investigation standpoint?
As part of the due diligence, we're having a phase 1 environmental completed.
Okay.
Need that report back, but I think we have there's nothing that we're aware of that's concerning with respect to soils conditions at this point.
But we'll have a phase 1.
Yeah.
Good deal. Okay. Council, any other questions, comments? Okay, I would entertain a motion then to.
And Mr. Mayor, just before we do
sorry.
that, it is a public hearing. And
got it. Sorry, second reading. So with that, I would open the meeting to discussion or comment from the public. Early on, we identified how to get onto our virtual meeting. So you can dial into www.basalt.net and follow your way through the agendas and get on to the meeting if you'd like to address council on this item. Do we have anyone in the waiting room, Pam?
Trustee Diana, and that's it.
Okay, so with that, hearing no public comment, then I would open the floor for a motion to approve ordinance number 3, series of 2022.
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt ordinance number 3, series of 2022 on second reading.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so I don't know who that was. Pam, you'll have to referee that one. I think it was either Gary or Elise. This has been moved and seconded. This will be a ordinance and therefore roll call vote.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Elise Huddle,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Gary Tenenbaum,
Yes.
and David Knight.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Great. Thank you very much. Next order of business is item 6B, first reading of ordinance number 4, series of 2022. This is an ordinance authorizing the financing of the acquisition of certain real property to be used by the police department, and in connection therewith authorizing the subsequent leasing of certain town property and the execution and delivery by the town of a site lease, a lease purchase agreement, and other documents related to the financing. Ryan and Christie. So.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. This is related to the previous item that Ryan and Jeff summarized really well in regards to the police facility purchase for the future police facility for that land. And so this, as Ryan had said, amount for the COPs is contemplated in the budget as the way that we were going to finance this purchase. And I'm going to go ahead and let Dee Weiser, who's our bond attorney, talk about how this thing is structured. And then we'll go ahead and let Bruce discuss the financing. And I can, if you guys want, I can share my screen. I have this up, so just let me know.
Great. Dee, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Maybe I'll call your attention to page 51 of your packet, which is the real essence of this ordinance. Of course, the town has had experience doing certificates of participation in 2019 and more recently in 2021. And this will be structured very similarly. As Jeff said, after the property is acquired, we'll do this financing. Bruce Kimmel is going to talk a little bit about doing an RFP for banks to do a private placement. But the documentation will be a site lease, that is a lease from the town to UMB, the trustee, a simultaneous lease purchase back to the town. The lease purchase agreement will have to terminate no later than 2025, being the term of this proposed financing. The site lease has a theoretical termination of December 31, 2028, but it will terminate as soon as the lease is paid in full. So it only has that extended date in the unlikely event that the town were to non-appropriate. The maximum principal amount is $1,375,000. Maximum annual payment amount is $500,000. Maximum total repayments authorized at $1,550,000 with an interest rate not to exceed 3%. And the lease can be subject to prepayment at any time. But I suspect Bruce will tell you that more likely than not, this will be non-callable since this is a short maturity. Really authorizes Ryan, Christie, and potentially the mayor, if neither of them are available, to make some final determinations, and for the mayor and clerk and other town officials to take necessary actions to put this financing into place. And so with that, Mayor, I'll stop and see if there are any questions for me, or if you want to lateral this directly to Bruce.
Questions, councilors, for Dee Weiser about the site lease arrangement? Yeah, Elise, go ahead. Yeah.
So I don't quite understand how we're using the term lease, and I think it's, possibly complicated by the fact that, we discussed the possibility of a lease back situation with loose cannon. So can you kind of define how you're using the term lease here?
Thank you. Yes. So it's a lease purchase agreement between UMB as the trustee leasing back to the town its interest under this site lease. I appreciate the complexity here, but loose cannon is really going to be a sublessor from the town. So the town will have a leasehold interest pursuant to the lease purchase agreement with UMB, and loose cannon will have a sublease interest pursuant to a sublease with the town.
And who is UMB again? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Umb Bank is a large commercial bank with offices in Colorado as well as elsewhere. They have a corporate trust department. They act as the trustee on behalf of the holders of the certificates of participation. And they've done so for the town in the 2021 and 2019 COP financings as well.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Okay. Other comments, presentation? Jeff or Ryan, are you?
Mr. Mayor, would it be helpful if I just gave a brief overview of the numbers themselves, or?
Yeah, that'd be good, Bruce, thanks.
Okay. Great. Well, Christy, if you'll go to page 56, that would be great. And good evening, Mayor and Council members, Bruce Kimmel-Ellers. This is our preliminary set of numbers for this transaction. You've seen numbers like this before, again, as Dee mentioned, with the Tabor refund COPs, as well as with your Albany Park COPs last year. This page is the sources and uses of funds. This is still under development, so some of these numbers might change a little bit. But you can see under the uses of funds, let's start there, that we're estimating that you'll need a total of $1.766 million for the acquisition and related costs. We anticipate the cost of issuance to do this transaction will be right around $50,000. So that's total uses of about 1.8 million. And then, as Christy mentioned in her cover memo, you already budgeted in this year's budget $500,000 for this acquisition. And so we're using 480,000 of that as equity into this, which will reduce the amount of the COPs that we need to balance out at approximately 1.336 million. You'll notice the ordinance does allow a maximum par amount a little bit higher, about $40,000 higher, just in case we do have some additional costs come into play. But you'll be right around 1.35 million, give or take. And then if we go into the next page, you can see our estimated debt service. It's really pretty difficult to estimate exactly where the bank market will come out on a privately placed COP transaction and a taxable one at that. So the 2% we think is a pretty decent proxy, but it may be a little bit higher or lower than that. One nice thing is because the town has the capacity to pay off these COPs so quickly, even if you do have a somewhat higher interest rate, it's really not going to make a big difference because you are paying them off over just over 3 years. But you can see the estimated payments, starting with an interest payment of about $19,000 here in 2022. That's the remainder of the $500,000 that's in your 2022 budget. And then you can see estimated debt service of about $465,000 per year for the 3 years of actual amortization. And again, in the parameters, we're setting a maximum of $500,000 a year. And I would expect us to be still well under that, even with a higher interest rate potentially. So I think that banks will be very interested in this because it is such a short transaction. Banks, like the rest of us, are trying to figure out where interest rates will go and where to deploy their liquidity as a result of that. And I think, given this volatility and uncertainty in the markets and in the world right now, having this be relatively short will really be attractive to banks looking at this deal. And I would point out also that with your 2019 and your 2021 financings that we did via a similar placement RFP, you received really strong interest from banks. And I would expect the same here. You've got local banks, regional banks, and national banks that have seen Basalt RFPs before. And I've already talked with one bank who said, yes, please absolutely send us the RFP when it's ready. So I expect to be able to report back good things to the city after we take bids later this month. And I would welcome any questions that you have.
So the all-inclusive cost, I assume that's interest plus all the cost of the transaction. Is that what gets us
Correct.
to the
Yes, that's right.
3.4%? Okay.
I have a question on interest rates. Given the volatility and kind of upward pressure, do you anticipate it, Bruce, going much above 2% between now? It's a pretty short time frame when this is all going to get done. What do you think?
Yeah, David, great question. Given the fact that banks don't have a whole lot of better alternatives unless they've got loans that they can lend this money to. Looking at treasury rates and other comparable taxable yields, I think that this is going to do quite well. And it's not a huge dollar amount either, right? So a lot of banks can easily tuck this into their investment portfolios as such. So I wish I could give you a more concrete answer, but I do think that 2%, even with the volatility we're seeing, should be right in the ballpark.
Thank you.
And I should point out also, in case you didn't catch this, remember that we did the Basalt forward financings all tax exempt and closing here in early 2022. We used up the town's bank qualification capacity for 2022 with those Basalt forward tax exempt bonds. And so that's why we're doing this small short-term COP on a taxable basis. It's so that, we knew we would have to do this in order to have the tax exempt bonds from before to be bank qualified. And what's really nice is twofold. One, with such a short term, the spread of a taxable rate over what you get on the tax exempt side is pretty small. And so you're not going to be having a lot of inefficiency with this taxable rate, given that you're paying it off within 3 years. And in addition, if for some reason the town's use of this parcel were to change prior to development, let's say over the next year or two, you have complete flexibility with this being a taxable financing to change the use and do something that might have what's called a private activity. And so I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, but it's working out really well to do this on a taxable basis, both because the interest rate isn't that much higher and because it will afford you some flexibility if, for whatever reason, your space needs change.
Okay. That concludes your remarks, I would gather. So are there any additional questions from council about our COP and property financing? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 4, series of 2022.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve ordinance number 4, series of 2022 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for February 22nd, 2022.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's begin with Bill Kane,
Yes.
Gary Tenenbaum,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Elise Huddle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are now on to our item number 6C, resolution number 13, series of 2022. It's a resolution of the town council, town of Basalt, Colorado, designating Blue Lake Preschool as the provider for an early childhood facility at parcel 2E, Cypress Meadows, PUD, and entering into an initial agreement with Blue Lake Preschool. Sarah has got this item. Good evening, Sarah. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Mr. Mayor. Before I get started, Pam, can you check to see if Michelle might be in as, instead of a panelist, maybe had just dialed in? Sorry, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Pam, she's in the.
Yep. She's there, and I'm popping her in.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'll get started here. So yes, council, this item is a continuation of the efforts of town staff and the Basalt Early Childhood Coalition to continue working on increasing efforts towards capacity for early childhood education in the Mid-Valley region. And this need, as you know, has been the need for additional licensed childcare and quality childcare services in the Mid-Valley is very well documented, particularly for infants and toddlers, but really for all ages up to kindergarten. So last December, council, you approved an agreement between the town and the design team consisting of Land and Shelter and Allen Ford Architects, and authorized this design this design team to produce conceptual designs for options for Early Childhood Development Center at Parcel 2E, which is the parcel that is just across the street, just south of Decaw, the final unfinished parcel between Willits and the Cypress Meadows single family homes. So in December, staff also released a request for qualifications for an experienced early childhood education provider that would work with the design team on the concept for the facility at Parcel 2E. They would also lead the charge in obtaining funding for the construction of the facility and ultimately be the operator of the facility once it is completed. So we did have a few interested parties, but only one actual applicant, and that came from Blue Lake Preschool Inc. with the director, Michelle Oger, who is here today. Michelle was interviewed by the selection committee, and she was highly recommended by the committee for this role as provider of Parcel 2E. Michelle comes with a wealth of experience. She has a proven track record of providing high quality childcare programs in the Mid-Valley and she has the staff and is ready to take on this role. Staff feels confident in the decision to move forward with Michelle and Blue Lake Preschool in this role as provider at Parcel 2E. So staff has included the draft resolution in council's packet for consideration. The resolution would confirm the town's relationship with Blue Lake Preschool Inc. as the provider for Parcel 2E for the project and direct staff to enter into an initial agreement as outlined in Exhibit A, subject to review by the town's attorney, of course. And it also authorizes the town manager to negotiate a lease with Blue Lake Preschool Inc., which includes performance standards that would be satisfied. And this would be brought back to council for review and approval. So this is really the final piece of this puzzle and getting this project that we've all been discussing for many years now, just kind of really giving it some legs and getting it moving. And we feel pretty positive about this. We do have Michelle here who is able to answer any questions that council may have. And please feel free to ask me any questions you may have about the process.
Good evening, Michelle. Welcome.
Thank you. I want to apologize for, it seems like I'm sitting in the dark, but I was at my daughter's basketball game at the elementary school, and I am now in the car calling in. So I apologize, but it's her last game of the season, so I was trying to catch as much of it as I could. So
that's great. So
well, I just want to say that that myself and the board and the staff at Blue Lake Preschool is excited to move forward with this project. I feel like we have the staff in place and the knowledge and sort of the experience and background to take on a project like this in the Mid-Valley. We've done quite a few expansions at Blue Lake and Elgibel in the 20 years that I've been there. And we opened another center in downtown Carbondale 6 years ago, which is doing great. And we're doing a second phase of expansion at that center as well. So we definitely have the momentum to keep going because there is a lack of childcare, as you all know, in our valley, and we are committed to providing quality care for the families that live here in the valley. So
great, Michelle. If you all proceeds as we all hope it will you maintain a presence at Blue Lake, or will that roll over into our new facility here, or will you keep a reduced center at Blue Lake and operate 2, and then with Carbondale 3 different centers, or what's your thinking there?
No, our goal is to not move over to Willits, but to expand. Our goal is to, and obviously, we're working with the design team, or willing to work with the design team on the size of the building. I suggested throughout this process that a 5 to 7 classroom would be ideal size center financially and to help fulfill the need for kids in the valley. Mm-hmm. So our goal would be to keep our school in Carbondale, to keep the school in Blue Lake, and this would be a 3rd location.
Okay, very good. So how many kids do you have now? How many at your 2 other centers?
In Carbondale, we're licensed for 39 kids a day, and that's infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. And in Elgibel, we are licensed for 114 kids a day, and that's infants through school-age kids. So we go through 4th grade. We do before and after school care for 5 of the local elementary schools, as well as spring break, winter break, summer break, and all the non-school days, early release Wednesday, things like that.
So conceptually, how many would we be accommodating at Willits?
Well, ideally, just with some, casual talk with numbers and size, my guess would be possibly a little larger than Elgibel. So I would imagine about 130 to 145 kids a day.
Wow. Dave? Good.
Yeah, thanks for putting together the response. Are you anticipating having an infant room in the Willits location?
Yes, my goal would be to have 1 infant room, 2 toddler rooms, possibly a toddler / preschool room, older toddlers, younger preschoolers, and then 2 preschool rooms and a school age program.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely infant and toddler care. And the more infants and toddlers we can have, the better, because that is where the greatest need is in our valley. Toddler care is almost in as high demand as infant care, but you also have to have enough older classes in order to move those kids up so they progress through your program. So your younger classrooms can't really outnumber your older classrooms. So.
And if I might just add, that was a requirement of the RFQ, was to provide with a minimum of infant through the pre-K years. So, if there's after school care for older kids or programs like that, that's kind of like a over and above, which we welcome. But we definitely wanted to make sure that those major age ranges were accounted for.
Great. Comments, questions from council? Gary, you've been at this for a long time, Child Care Coalition.
You're gonna force me to talk? I'm a lame duck. I don't need to talk anymore. But no, I'm so excited that that we are at this point to actually, thanks Michelle to put in an offer, because it's exciting to see that if we can come together and actually make 2E work, which I'm very hopeful we will, that we actually could get another over 100 kids, in preschool in Willits too. And so, we've been trying to rectify the fact that Willits had no preschool, because, yes, Elgibel has some with Blue Lake and Honeytree, but, Willits in the town did not. And it's just, to me, this would correct that and actually be able to really, hopefully, be able to be flexible, because now we need infant and toddler, but, 5-10 years from now, it might be preschool. I mean, hopefully, as a state and a country, we can provide more universal preschool, and that we can actually get more of our valley population into preschool so they're ready for kindergarten. So I'm hopeful that this is going to be a huge benefit to the town of Basalt. So
Great, thanks. Jeff, did you have some comments?
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback on how Sarah laid this out and just make it clear that what council's approving is an initial agreement with Blue Lake. This was really to select them as a provider, get them plugged into this planning process for what might come next on 2E. And then before there would be any development or construction on the site, once we get out of this initial phase, we'd be looking at additional agreements with Blue Lake and otherwise. And so this is just an initial.
Sure.
I just wanted to make clear to council what the scope of this agreement did.
Great. Understood. Comments, questions? Is there a motion to approve it's first reading on
Resolution 13.
resolution number 13, 2022?
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 13, series of 2022.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Pam, please.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum,
yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Elise Huddle,
Yes.
and Bill King.
Yes, thank you.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Good work
Thank
here.
you.
It's encouraging to see us moving forward.
Thank you so
Michelle.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you. We're excited. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, childcare reminds me of the discussions about the weather. Everybody talks about it. Nobody does anything about it, but we're doing something about it. So this is cool. Thank you,
Yes,
guys.
very exciting. Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
So we're then on to first reading of ordinance number 5 of 2022. Ordinance of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending the 2022 budget and providing for a supplemental appropriation for carryover of funds from 2021 budget to the 2022 budget for various projects and additional funding for the Midland Avenue Streetscape project. Lots of exciting news there with grants and everything else. Christy, you got it?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. I'm just getting up the presentation for you. Just one second. I think I'll talk about it for a second first. So this ordinance, the exhibit to this ordinance is very, very busy because we have a lot of projects going on, as the mayor noted at the last meeting, between Basalt Forward and transitioning that to a bond program, and Basalt River Park and Public Works, and in the fiber, and there's just a lot of projects that we didn't know when we originally started the budget if we were going to finish those projects or how much we were going to finish in 2021 versus 2022. So we made a decision during the 2022 budget creation that we were going to keep the numbers static as of the October 15th date, because we didn't want to confuse the numbers for council or for ourselves. And we thought this would be a better way to identify those carryovers all in one place. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up color coding them so they're all in pink. So you can see the carryovers pretty easily. So I'll go ahead and present my screen here just a second.
Cool.
Okay. Here we go. All right. So I'm just going to go down to the numbers here. There we go. Now, so all of the pink numbers are all of our carryover numbers. So you note that some of them are revenues and inflows. Like, for example, the dump truck that we actually ordered in 2020, we just got it in 2022. We thought we were going to get it in 2021. So that is a wash, but we have to show that lease purchase in 2022 and encumber it into the correct year. So then we've got the Pickens County DOLA project, which is also a carryover, and a little bit of a carryover. It's a match for car charger grants that were originally budgeted for the prior year. So then there's these other projects here too that are just expenditures in our capital costs. So we had done a deep dive before Susan left, and with James and myself and Jenny, to just look through all of our capital projects and transition those items into the next fiscal year that we did not get complete. And so then after doing all of that work for all of these items here, which if you guys have questions or want me to go through in specific detail, I will. But more, I'm just going to explain the process and how we did this. We transferred those into the next year. And then I looked at the total budget versus actual that we have on our 2021 actuals and noted that, yeah, we did not spend that money for last year. So that truly is monies available for carryover. So just did a couple of re-verifications on that, because it's a lot of stuff we put together for sure. And then we have the purple numbers are actually increases in the budget, because I wanted to identify those separately for transparency. We have a little bit of an anticipated increase in a $25,000 in restricted childcare costs for, and now this is for the design phase. We have 25,000 in there, so that'll move it to 30. It gives us a little bit more room there through our restricted funding. And then we have 465,000 for Midland Avenue Streetscape project. Now, what we're doing here is we're showing a little bit of a match from the town, and where we're getting that from is our building permit fees. They were favorable compared to our original budget by 465,000. And so those are one-time favorable variances that it's easy to put into something like this to help with that project. So, and then it's more favorable and advantageous for us when we go to the grantor, when we were asking for the state revitalization grant so that we could ask for $1 million there. And then we had that 465,000 match from the town. And then we have some ARPA funding in addition to that. So really all we're asking from the revitalization grant for the state is to try to get us over that finish line to get to our fully funded project. And right now that number is at 11,469,000 there. And then they have our last numbers here on the top. In the blue are those are additional pretty much pass-throughs from grant revenue that we're receiving. So that's what that represents, the blue. So do you guys have any questions on this?
I don't. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward accounting procedure here to try to carry these funds over. So anyone else? Okay. So we need, excuse me, I've lost track of my agenda here for a sec.
There's a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
I think we're number 5, series 2022.
Great. So, Elise, now while you're on a roll, why don't you keep going?
I'm taking over for Glenn since he's not here. Mayor, I move that the Town Council approve ordinance number 5, series of 2022 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for February 22nd, 2022.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Pam, please.
Absolutely. Let's begin with David Knight,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
and Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So we're on to item 6E. This is resolution number 14, series of 2022. Resolution of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, canceling the regular municipal election on April 5, 2022, and declaring the candidates elected. Jeff and Pam. This is kind of what Joseph Stalin did, didn't he? And
Yikes.
he canceled elections.
Not
declared himself elected. Well, Mr. Mayor, in this case, we had a municipal election scheduled for April. There are 3 council positions open, and we had 3 candidates for those seats. So under the municipal election code, if there are not more candidates than there are seats to be filled, the council may cancel the election and declare those candidates elected. And that is what's in front of you tonight. Those candidates are Ryan Slack, Dieter Schindler, and Angela Anderson. They would get sworn into office at the end of the April 12th meeting. And Pam, I hope I didn't steal all of your thunder here, but please fill in anything I might have missed.
You stole none of my thunder. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm not crazy enough to appoint myself mayor elected. So. So no, Jeff, I think you covered it really well. We don't have anything else on the agenda other than the election of candidates. We had 3 people submit petitions that were correct, and that's it.
We think we're saving like $12,000 by going direct to appointments.
Yeah, we think 12 to 15,000.
Great.
Mm-hmm. So it's a big chunk. Don't tell Christy.
Mayor, can I just interject briefly that typically, there's a debate among candidates in advance of the election itself, and I've been speaking with Chris at the chamber, and still encouraging that while we don't do a debate necessarily, but an opportunity for these folks to just talk about their interest in running for council, some of the things that they're interested in accomplishing, and introducing themselves generally for those that maybe aren't as well known or haven't been on council in the past. So still looking ahead to that with a tentative date of March 7th. And then town staff is, as we did at the last go round 2 years ago, looking to bring all three candidates in to sit down with town department heads and just kind of go through what some of the rules of the road are, introduce them to the strategic plan and the master plan, talk to them a little bit about their roles and responsibilities, and then we'll follow that up with some more onboarding afterward, just to make sure that everybody kind of gets brought up to speed, and probably bring Sursa back in and look for some Colorado Municipal League trainings as well. So hoping to do quite a bit of onboarding, and this time around, unlike with you guys, get to do more of it in person, hopefully. So looking forward to that.
Very good. Any comments, questions, observations? So we're past the write-in deadline also, are we now, Pam?
That's correct, Mayor.
So we can proceed. Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve Resolution 14 of 2022.
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 14 series of 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Clerk, please.
You said that kind of fast, Gary.
I'm just amazed that we're not doing an election, Pam.
I am too. This is the second time in my career that this has
You've
happened.
been here longer than me.
Somebody asked me why. Somebody asked me why there was, why we didn't have an election. I said, well, we just crushed dissent. I think that's.
It's true.
But certainly there's a lot happening, a lot of positive things happening in our town. We're moving forward, so I feel great about it. And we got great folks coming on to council, so this is all good.
Okay. All right. I'll begin with Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Bill Kane.
Yes.
Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
And David Knight.
Yes.
Thank you all. Motion carries.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, that concludes our business for tonight. I apologize for such a brief meeting. I know that, we're hanging out for a while, but if there are no additional comments or discussion, I'd be pleased to call us adjourned, and look forward to seeing everybody in person for our 22nd meeting, 22nd of February. So great. And enjoy the winter and the snow, and wish I could join you. I broke my ankle hiking in California last week, so my ski season came to an abrupt halt.
Oh, bummer, Bill.
We'll see.
I'll send you a picture a week. I'll make you feel better.
Oh, thanks. Oh, yes, please. Were you in the lift line? Perfect. Or skinning up? That'd be great. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good
Good night. Good night.